Why do I allow myself to talk myself into such predicaments? OMG. You are in tune to Boxing Talk with Rafi. Which one is this? I think it's 236. Is it 236, 237? Almost. 237. I was only one out. The Rafi was only one out. Let us commence with this shiznix. We got the John Daly up in the building. Good afternoon to you, sir. We have the Leighton Evelyn. Good afternoon, sir. Up in the building. Okay, so without much further ado, let's get into this shiznix. Let me get the screen right. Let me get the screen right. At the bottom of the screen, you will see the subject matter, the topic. Ra-ta-ta-ta. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay, let's enlarge this and then get into the topic. Okay, so title of the piece is Heavyweight Lineal Talk. Heavyweight Lineal Talk is something that keeps popping up, keeps reoccurring, and we want to smash it. We smashed it before, but periodically we have to come back to this very same topic. Lineal, undisputed, unified. We're going to try and make sense of this. I think it already makes sense. I think most people have a pretty good handle, a pretty good grip on this situation. But some people struggle with it. And hopefully, we've done it before, but we need to do it again. I think we need to do this every 6 months at least. Hopefully, we're going to go through this thing and kill it once and for all, and it will forever make sense. We're going to try and make sense of what some people may say is nonsense. So we're going to try and make sense of what some people may consider to be nonsense. But okay, so where will we begin? Where do we begin? I think, well, first things first. First things first, let me share my shizzle. Where do we begin? I think, okay, well, first thing was the impromptu sound check. Okay, sound check is good. We are live and clear, hopefully. Okay, so let me go ahead and share this shizzle. It would already have been visible, but let's make it even more visible. Let's share this within the secret societies. Let's have a look right here. Okay. I've already shared this in some places. I already made this link, so obviously people could see it. But let's go ahead and really share it now. Let's have a look. Boom. That's shared. Let's share it over here. Shared. And let's have a look anywhere else. Anywhere else. Huh. Okay. Okay, that is thoroughly shared now. Shared on YouTube and beyond. Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Okay, so I don't think we waited. I don't think what's going on. Yeah, 4:30 was advertised at 4. It's now 4:30. I think it's time for the links to go out. We're not here to dilly-dally. Let's drop the links in the chat, or drop the link in the chat. Okay, so there is the link. Okay, so there is the link, and what am I saying? Let me have a look. Let me have a look at what I've got up. Let's have a look at what I've got up. Okay, and in comes bright and early. In comes the man like Leighton Evelyn. Evelyn, how do you do today?
Good afternoon, Raph. I'm all good, mate. All good. Glad to be here.
100% bright and early on this Saturday afternoon. Well, it's late afternoon, early evening, but I think it's a good time. This is the sun is beginning to settle out on the horizon. We're coming in with another one, John D. Lee. Okay. Got John D. Lee, extra quiet there, extra quiet, but the mute button is off. Can't, not picking up any sound. So let John sort out his technical difficulties. Where are we? Okay, so smash that like button as you enter. Hit that like button as you enter. And where do I begin? I think I'm gonna start off with a little bit of writing on the topic. And I think we're gonna go with the origins. We're gonna go back and look at some origins. Gonna look at some heavyweight champions. And I think we're gonna start back. We're gonna start back from pretty much down near the beginning. Okay, so let me line this thing up, and that's not what I wanted to do. Let me share this with you. Let's have a look. Let's stop sharing that. Screen share. Start sharing this. I don't know if John, is your mic working? Is your mic working, John? Testing. I don't know. John's got some technical difficulties there, but it's okay as we proceed. I'm sure he'll make the necessary adjustments. Okay, so let's have a look at this article. Let's go straight into it. Okay, public acclamation. And as a matter of fact, let me kill that music there just a little bit. Let me kill that for a second. And as a matter of fact, I know what I'll come back with. Okay. So, public acclamation. Talking about the years from 1884 to 1921. Let's have a look what's going on here. Dang. And the fight doctor has joined us. So we got a full house now. We got a full house, although John Dealey is not audible at the moment. I'm sure he'll sort that out. Okay, so let's get into this article. I wonder if you can see what I can see. Let me get it a little bit bigger. Let me get this a little bit bigger. What's going on here? Let's get into the right place. There we are. Okay, hopefully that should be clear on your screens. Yes, it is. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so in this quick journey that we're going to be taking into lineal ship, so-called lineal ship I think we're going to start here. We're going to start here. This is going to be the first port of call. So, okay, let's go. So, public acclamation. Champions were recognized by wide public acclamation. That's how a champion was recognized. A heavyweight champion was a boxer who had a notable win over another notable boxer and who then went without defeat. Retirement from the ring periodically led to a true champion going unrecognized, or for several to be recognized by the public for periods of time. Typically, public interest in having a single true champion resulted in any claimants to the heavyweight title being matched with one another. The winner of that bout was subsequently deemed the champion, with the claim and lineage title. Lineage title of the defeated boxer largely forgotten. Okay, so what do we have here? Typically, public interest in having a single true champion resulted in any claimants to the heavyweight title being matched with another one. The winner of that bout was subsequently deemed the champion, with the claim and the lineage of the defeated boxer largely forgotten. Okay, I think that's pretty damn clear. Pretty damn clear. So I think that's the opening. That's the opening. That's the opening. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? Okay. So, let's bring in Leighton Evelyn and the Fight Doctor. John Dealey has disappeared. I'm sure he will reappear. Leighton Evelyn. So that's the opening. That's the opening in this talk.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I know what the lineal champion is. That's what I said to you. Fury is not no lineal champion. You know what I mean, mate?
Okay, that was Leighton Evelyn and the Fight Doctor. How do you do? Welcome.
Fight Doctor's in the house on Rick James status. As always, good morning / afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon to you.
So, you guys already know what my stance is. I adhere to the argument that in order to be the man, you have to beat the man, and that the WBC, BA, IBF, BO, whatever, whoever organization, they do not determine who is or who is not a champion, and that the belts are essentially meaningless. They have no historical value. Their value is based on this assumption that, or this legitimacy that has been artificially imposed on these sanctioning organizations, more like sanctioning mobs, and that they have no real meaning. The only title that is of any significance is the title that you get from having beat the man.
Having beaten the man.
But
That's
how can
right.
you be the man if you haven't got a title?
Well, so here's how you become the man. You become the man by beating the man, and that is really the only title that, in my mind, has any real significance.
What if the man?
Can you hear me now, Ralph?
I can hear you. 1 second.
Okay.
What if the man retires? What if the man retires and he's not available to fight? What then? Fight Doctor.
Well, you become the man by being the last man standing. So when you go and you knock off all of the other pretenders, contenders, and that's how you establish a new lineage, and you then become the man.
So, okay, that's very interesting. Okay, and in comes man like John D. Lee's fixed his mic. John D. Lee.
Good afternoon, Ralph.
How do you do, John?
Yeah, I'm good.
You fixed your mic, John?
Yeah, I have, yeah. I'm quite relieved.
It'd have been sod's law if your mic packed up.
Raphael, there's always a shop. New headphones could get bought. Not that serious.
I thought it was going to be a cruel twist of fate.
Not possible. Not possible. The Fight Doctor needs some education on this subject.
Uh-oh.
So,
Pray continue.
okay. Well, I've got a series of questions for him. So, my first one,
Okay.
Fight Doctor. So, are you saying that you only recognize a lineal champion?
I only recognize a lineal champion. That's correct.
Okay. So, my next question is, when did Jack Johnson become heavyweight champion of the world? And who did he beat to become champion?
Okay, so that's a difficult question because so you have two schools of thought. So there's one school of thought that says that when a lineal champion retires, that he can essentially name the two fighters who will contest for the vacant title. So in the case of Jim Jeffries, he essentially nominated Marvin Hart and I forget the other guy.
The other
To
guy is
contest.
Jack Root, and
Right.
unfortunately, that's a misrepresentation of what actually happened. Do you want me to tell you what happened?
I'm all ears. I'm all ears.
Okay. So the promoters for the fight were Al Livingston and Joe P. Kidd Egan. In May of 1905, a few days after Jim Jeffries announced his retirement, they set up the Fight Commission of Nevada with the sole purpose of staging a world heavyweight title fight between Root and Hart. They gave them a contract where the winner would win 65% of a $5,000 purse and would become the heavyweight champion of the world. Once the contract was agreed, they then went on to ask Jim Jeffries if he would referee the match. That's how they tried to get legitimacy for it. Jim Jeffries had nothing to do with selecting the two combatants for this match.
Okay, well, at the end of the day, Johnson knocked out Jeffries. So
Okay, no, that's fine. So when did Larry Holmes become world champion?
when he knocked out Muhammad Ali.
Okay, how many title defenses has Larry Holmes got?
Now I off the top of my head, I don't know. But it did not begin. So his title reign, in my mind, did not begin with his win over Ken Norton. His title reign began with his win over Muhammad Ali.
So you believe, contrary to most people, that Larry Holmes only has 11 title defenses then?
So his reign began with his win over Muhammad Ali. So however many fights,
so that reduces it down to 10.
right, so how many title defenses he had between the victory over Ali and the loss to Spinks, that's how many times he defended the title, in my mind.
Okay. Well, that's 10 then. So you're not of the school of thought that you can nominate, that an ex-champion can nominate his successors to fight it out.
No, I am of that. I am of that school of thought. I am of that school of thought.
Well, you've just told me that Jack Johnson became heavyweight champion when he knocked out Jim Jeffries. So,
well, I mean, so it seems to me that your argument is that Jim Jeffries did not indeed dominate Hart and the other guy.
There's quite a lot of evidence. I've got quotes from Jim Jeffries himself, but the most damning evidence is the fact that the contract was agreed for the fight prior to Jim Jeffries knowing anything about it. So how did he nominate them?
Okay, well,
arranged?
Listen, if that's indeed the case, look, listen, you're preaching to the choir. If that is indeed the case, and if Jeffries indeed did not nominate Hart and the other guy, what's his name, to contest for the vacant title, then I would not recognize that fight as a heavyweight championship contest.
Okay, the reason I'm bringing up these issues is because I'm just going to count them up. One. So I'm aware of 7 different bodies claiming to be custodians of the lineal title. How many sanctioning bodies are there currently?
4, around 4.
Well, I mean, at a stretch, you could make it 5.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, there are lots of sanctioning bodies. There's one for every.
My point
there's one literally for every day of the week.
There's actually more custodians of the lineal title than there are sanctioning bodies, whichever measure you use.
Okay,
and the whole criticism of the sanctioning bodies is there's too many and they don't agree with each other. Whereas when you go to the lineal title, there's actually more, and there's further disagreement as well.
And okay, I can definitely see that. And listen, certainly everyone who claims to be a quote unquote custodian of the lineal title are self-appointed. And it does not mean that they're not politically motivated or have some other agenda. So, dude, I'm agreeing with you. If you're suggesting that everyone who claims to be a custodian, a quote-unquote custodian of the lineal title, is somehow motivated by something other than boxing history or boxing tradition, then I would readily agree with you.
Yeah, but to be frank, when it comes down to any historical debate, there's always differing opinions. And there's no one correct answer because it's all been done retrospectively.
So,
and again, I would agree with that point also. However, I would also add that any way you look at it, that the credibility, the quote unquote credibility of these sanctioning bodies is nil or less than. Because we know exactly what motivates them. And listen, apart from the argument about the lineage, the lineal title, and who are pretenders to be custodians of the lineal title, that does not in any way validate or give validity to the sanctioning organizations whose top priority, because listen, the sanctioning organizations are first and foremost businesses. All right, this is what we need to understand. They are businesses. And what is the purpose of business? To make money, right? Now, the lineage of the heavyweight title has nothing to do with business. It has everything to do with the sport of boxing and its tradition and its history.
I'm slightly confused by that statement. Are you suggesting that boxers are amateurs, or?
I'm sorry?
Are boxers not professional sports people?
Sure, boxing is a profession.
I'm not aware of any professional sport that isn't a business, whether it's the NFL, NBA, NBL, Premiership football, Champions League football. These are all businesses that primary purpose is to make money.
And I agree 100%.
So do you not recognize the NFL? Do you recognize the NBA?
I recognize them for what they are.
So how can you not recognize the belts then?
Listen, boxing is a sport, right? Boxing, boxing did not come into being as a business. It came into being as a sport.
Whoa, that is not true.
Wait, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me finish. I heard you. Now, listen, when you go to, so here in Chicago, in the suburbs, there is a very well-known business school called the Northwestern University Kellogg School of Business, right? Now, if you enroll in this school, very prestigious school, there are no courses. There is no curriculum called boxing, right? There is no curriculum called boxing. Why? Because boxing is
Can you enroll in that to become an entrepreneur?
Sure, you can.
Okay.
What?
Can you enroll to become an inventor?
Here's my question. Here's my question to you. When you go to a boxing,
answer the question.
Yes, you can. You can enroll to become an entrepreneur or
no. Can you enroll to become an inventor?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
I'd be very surprised if you could become an inventor, because nobody's been successful in teaching how to do that. Right. However, some of the best business people in the history of economics have come up with new inventions.
I would be inclined to agree with you, sir. Now,
So,
I
based
would like
on
you to,
that, a business school's curriculum isn't the sole definition of what defines a business activity.
all right. Now, answer me this question. How many guys have gone to a boxing gym and earned a degree in business?
And I think you'll find that there are a lot of successful business people who don't have degrees in business.
But that was not my question.
I don't know the answer. However, I would argue that it's not a requirement of it being a professional sport. Have you heard of the term? Have you heard of
degrees?
Yeah, but it's not a requirement, is it? Have you heard of the term prize fighting?
Have you heard how many boxers, professional prize fighters, have ended their careers broke?
Yeah, but lots of successful business people cease being successful and become bankrupt.
And how many people have earned a living in boxing and have never put on gloves?
Lots of people.
Yes. So I would I think
but that's the same with all sports.
So again,
how many chairmen of Premiership football clubs have been professional footballers?
How many chairmen of none that I can think of.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. Does that stop football being a sport?
So I think what we're saying is, or at least what I'm saying, is that there is a division, there is a clear line to be drawn between the business side of sports and the actual sport itself, the practitioner. Okay?
No.
Because listen, the rules of boxing, right? The Marquess of Queensberry rules have nothing to do with finance. Okay? The Marquess of Queensberry rules do not say anything about how you should structure your investments. They don't. All right.
But it's an encouragement to get boxers in the ring. Money. That's what it's to do with money. You've got to have money, otherwise you're not going to get the boxers in the ring to do it. They're going to be a normal job.
You're just skirting around the fact that it's prize fighting predates the Olympics and amateur boxing. Prize fighting is older than that.
What I'm saying is that
fighters fought for money.
What I'm saying to you is that
many of them were professionals, and that was their sole source of income.
What I'm saying to you is that conflict predates capitalism. That's what I'm saying. And what I'm also saying. Well,
what's your definition of capitalism?
And what I'm also saying is that people find reason for conflict other than capitalism. That's what I'm saying.
You need to explain what your definition of capitalism is, because as far as I'm concerned, as soon as you have money, you have a capitalist system. And for when we've had, I'd say there's a difference between war and sport. So capitalism is older than sport, as far as I am aware. They had money before any record of any sporting contest, including, if you want to try and go all the way back to the Greek Olympics, they still had money. So capitalism predates all sport. If you want to turn it into conflict, that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about professional sport.
Well, what is sport other than a contest? The contest is just a nice way of saying conflict.
So I'm going to step in here because I'm confused.com. I'm confused.com. So we're going to bring this back to the center of the road, and you can tell us exactly what we're talking about, how this pertains to boxing, and what the key point is. Each man is going to put it in a nutshell right about now.
All right, so the key point that I'm trying to make is that boxing has nothing to, that the sport of boxing, the art of boxing, the act of boxing, boxing itself, the sport, has nothing to do with capital gain. Nothing. In its purest interpretation, right? Have you ever heard the term fight for glory?
I'm going to stop you there. That was the nutshell. Boxing has nothing to do with capital gain. I have to write that down.
I've got the absolute opposite opinion, that prize fighting is called prize fighting because the fighters fight for money, i.e. capital gain. And I would like the fight doctor to tell me of any heavyweight contest in the history of of the Marquis of Queensberry rules that was not fought for a financial based purse.
Okay, before we go there, we just need to lock this in. The fight doctor says boxing, his central point in this area is boxing has nothing to do with capital gain. That's the fight doctor's position. John's position, as I understand it, is the exact opposite. And how does this fit in the mosaic which we're trying to make a complete picture? John.
What I think is the fight doctor is trying to suggest that because the sanctioning bodies are businesses, that invalidates them as governing bodies of the sport. My argument would be every single other governing body of any sport is a business, and a business first, because it's professional sport. Even in amateur sport, this becomes a very hazy line because of where we are in the current. But when it comes to professional sports, which is what we are talking about, all sports are businesses first. So his argument has no basis.
All sports are businesses.
That's why it's called professional. You're getting paid. It's professional.
All sports are business first, and what is the impact? What is the crushing blow here? What is the crushing blow? What is the impact in the overall picture in this particular point?
Well, it's the fight doctor's point, so he needs to try and administer the blow.
But do you have a counter? Do you have a counter? Have you got a counter hook? Do you
Well,
have a
counter to it is it's always been prize fighting from
Right.
its inception.
In a nutshell.
So it's irrelevant. Yeah.
In a nutshell. Okay. The fight doctor. What do you seek to establish if your point were to be the prevailing point, were to be the winning point? What would you seek to establish from that point?
So the heavyweight title is considered and has been for a long time the most coveted prize in sports. Now, the key word here is coveted, not lucrative, meaning you can participate in other sports and make more money, right? But the heavyweight title is the most coveted prize in sports. Why? Because it comes with a certain distinction that cannot be purchased. It comes with a certain glory that cannot be purchased. You have to actually earn it in the ring, right? And this has nothing to, and when I say earn, I don't mean earn in terms of your ability to make money, but earn in terms of your statue, in terms of your what's what I'm looking for? In terms of your standing, right? Things that cannot be purchased, things that are like, for instance, the lineal title is not governed by anything attached to capitalism, right? It's not. It has more to do with glory and honor and respect, things that cannot be purchased. Right? That's the reason why we have a lineal title in the first place, because it's not a title that can be purchased, unlike the WBC title, which you can buy, which is available for the highest bidder, right? The WBC, IBF title, all these things can be bought to a certain degree. The lineal title can't be purchased. It can't be bought. You have to earn it. You have to earn it. How do you earn it? You earn it by knocking off all of the pretenders.
Okay, so how is your point, if it were to be the prevailing point, how would that be how is that a crushing blow in this debate? How is it a crushing blow?
Well, when you recognize a lineal title when you recognize it for what it is, then it automatically invalidates these pretenders, like the WBC and the IBF and all these other people who claim to have the wherewithal to decide or determine who is or who is not a champion.
And how would it automatically whatever you said, it would automatically something. to the
Can I come back?
to the governing bodies? No, this is a key point right now. This is a key point. The fight doctor.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
How would it undermine? How would it undermine the sanctioning bodies?
Okay, so well, again, like I said, the sanctioning bodies are businesses, right? And the purpose of business is to make money. The purpose of business, the main goal of business, and in this case, the WBC or these sanctioning bodies, is not to preserve the integrity of the sport of boxing or its history or its traditions. No, those are all secondary, or in most cases, tertiary, right? That's not the primary concern. The primary concern, where these sanctioning organizations are concerned, and others, is to make money. The Lineal title, on the other hand, has more to do with preserving the integrity of the sport of boxing and integrity of the championship title lineage. So these concepts, when we start talking about integrity, when we start talking about history.
Let me stop you there. You see, I understood what you needed to say to express yourself. And I understood in how few words you could have done it. But you went above and beyond the amount of words needed to explain your position, my friend.
Can I come back on the position?
Way above and beyond. I think I've got it in a nutshell now, but I'm going to let John respond to it, and then I'm going to put it in a nutshell where you failed to put it in a nutshell. Okay, over to you, John.
Okay, well, there's a couple of things. Initially, so from John L. Sullivan up until, I don't know at what point, but most likely up until Muhammad Ali, the heavyweight boxing championship was the richest prize in boxing, and that's why it was coveted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the heavyweight boxing champion of the world was the highest paid sportsman in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It took a very long time for this status to get eroded due to various different factors that made other sports more popular than boxing. So from its get-go, it was the richest sport in prize, not the most coveted. And that's completely contrary to your point. Secondly, it was always a money motivation. It was always a business. The reason the colour line got drawn was partly racism and partly due to business. Because of the socio-economic conditions of America, when two black fighters fought, it didn't create big gates. It didn't generate a lot of money. That was one of the reasons. Amongst others, it's always been a business from its inception. There isn't some lofty ideal behind this. It's prize fighting. It is two men fighting for money. That's what it is. In its purest sense, that's what prize fighting is.
Okay, so my findings. It's very easy. It's very, very easy. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, it's very, very easy. Prize fighting is called prize fighting for a damn reason. It is because you're fighting for a prize. That's why it's called prize fighting, and the prize is a bag of money, which is known as a purse. Boxing, the hypothesis put forth by the fight doctor was that boxing has nothing to do with capital gain, and I put it to you that boxing has everything to do with capital gain. So I think, fight doctor, you have to hold the L on that one. You have to hold the L on the boxing has nothing to do with capital gain. And of course, that goes on to the argument for Lineal, that it is somehow stems from a more pure stream than the stream of capital gain. Okay, so that was that first element. That was the first element. John D. Lee, I think I'll let you pick the second element, or do you want to hand that over to the fight doctor to pick the second element?
Well, the other thing with the lineal title is it's an artificial thing that's been done retrospectively.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about people like Jack Johnson, Jim Jeffries, and John L. Sullivan, they weren't considered the lineal heavyweight champion of the world. They were just considered the heavyweight champion. This has then been described as a consensus champion.
Mm-hmm.
But the real process was the newspapers and boxing writers at the time pretty much agreed on who the champion was. And then, up until the point that Jeffries retired, that person was defeated in the ring. Because Jeffries came out of retirement, the first real break in what people describe as a lineage came about when Gene Tunney retired.
Mm-hmm.
So the lineal title was really started by Nat Fleischer when he started the Ring magazine in the 1920s.
Right.
Now, the last time I checked, the Ring magazine was a business. So again, the Ring magazine started to claim their own title to sell their publication.
Mm-hmm. So,
but the lineal title's been broken up loads of times. So how can you still call it a lineal title? Because it's all make-believe, mate. There's no title. There's supposed to be the man that beat the man, that beat the man, that beat the man, that goes all the way back. But it's been broken up so many times. So it's a non-existent title. It's a make-believe title. It's like me, I could call myself the world champion Tooth Fairy. It's made that title. Do you know what I mean? It's made up.
Well, if you wanted to be strict about it, you could say there's 3 lineages because there's only 3 champions that retired and stayed retired. The other times when champions retired, Joe Louis, Jim Jeffries, Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, they all came back and fought the champion and lost. So
right.
you could argue that there are 3 lineages. But when we get into the current situation, the title's been vacant since 2004.
2004. With the reign of Lennox Lewis.
Yeah. So obviously Lennox stayed retired.
Yeah.
He became lineal champion by people that rate this sort of thing when he beat Shannon Briggs, who took it from George Foreman.
Yes.
But again, that shows that George Foreman, whilst he was lineal champion, he wasn't the consensus champion because of the poor opposition that he fought at the time.
He was lineal, but not consensus. Okay, that's a very good point there. That is a very good point. Lineal, but not consensus. That sounds like point 2. Lineal. The Fight Doctor. You want to talk about that? Lineal, but not consensus.
So it depends on who forms the consensus. Now, in the case of George Foreman, the consensus that he was George Foreman was not the heavyweight champion. That consensus was formed by people like HBO, who clearly had an agenda, right? Now, going by the strict rules of the man who beat the man who beat the man, George Foreman was the heavyweight champion of the world. All right. Simple fact, he beat Michael Moore. The lineage of Foreman's title went all the way back to Floyd Patterson, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yeah, it's Floyd Patterson's lineage.
Right. So who is HBO exactly to come along and determine that George Foreman, whose lineage can be traced all the way back to Floyd Patterson, and Floyd Patterson held the title when there was no HBO? How is it that a consensus of people, right, who are obviously motivated by something other than the tradition and history and of boxing, can decide who is or who isn't the champion, right? The WBC, IBF, when Floyd Patterson was a heavyweight champion, they did not even exist, right? And nobody questions the claim that Floyd Patterson has on the heavyweight championship. So I just don't understand how is it that George Foreman could not have been the heavyweight champion, and who could form a consensus that he wasn't when he beat Michael Moore and had not lost until he fought Shannon Briggs. So that doesn't make any sense. So anyone who could form a consensus that George Foreman or anyone else for that matter who beat the man isn't the champion, in my opinion, has been smoking crack. And I mean, seriously.
Well, I can answer that question for you. Who formed the consensus that Jack Johnson was the champion?
Again, Jack Johnson knocked out Jim Jeffries.
Okay,
So
who formed the consensus that John L. Sullivan was the champion?
Now honestly, I can't answer that question.
I can answer the question.
Crack, mate.
And listen,
I can answer that question. I can answer that question for you.
But before you answer that question, I don't recognize John L. Sullivan as having been heavyweight champion.
Well, how do you recognize Jim Jeffries then?
I don't necessarily recognize Jim Jeffries as having been heavyweight.
Well, how do you recognize Jack Johnson then?
I recognize Jack Johnson as having been the first true heavyweight champion because he knocked out everyone else. That's why.
He didn't knock out everybody else. He didn't knock out Sam Langford.
Well, he
didn't fight Jean Jeanette, Sam Langford, or McVeigh. He didn't fight any of the leading black fighters of his era.
So Jack Johnson was a colored heavyweight champion. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Not at the time that he beat Tommy Burns, he wasn't. I think Jean Jeanette was. I can check it for you.
All right, well, let's check that.
Yeah, we'll check that one out.
Okay, so what are we seeking to establish in this round? Lineal.
Well, what I was going to, in answer to his question, was the people that determined that Jim Jeffries was a champion, which the Fight Doctor has already said that Jack Johnson's reign started when he beat Jim Jeffries.
Yeah.
Not when he beat Tommy Burns. But the people that established John L. Sullivan, Jim Jeffries, Tommy Burns were the boxing writers.
Right.
In this era, these were the people who actually decided the results of fights. Mm-hmm. So you would have what was called a newspaper decision.
Yeah.
So historically, the boxing writers were the ones who determined who the consensus champion was. Mm-hmm. And they put it in their papers. And the majority of papers agreed. This is obviously the media of the day. So HBO was a member of that media. They weren't the only members of the media who felt that due to the poor opposition, George Foreman was no longer the consensus champion. And they put that consensus onto, I'm pretty certain it was Holyfield after he beat Bo.
Evander Holyfield.
Yes. Okay. But because he'd beaten Bo. So that's a 1 and 2 box off for best in class. Mm-hmm. And so that's how that consensus champion was formed. Not solely by HBO, but by the consensus of the boxing journalists in exactly the same way that it was done in the late 1800s and the early 20th century.
But do you not see how the business of boxing has corrupted the sport? When you have an entity like
how are you telling me that the business of boxing didn't corrupt the sport when you're having people like Sam Langford being blocked from fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world?
Listen, I'm agreeing with you. Listen, what happened in Jack Johnson's era was shameful.
So boxing no question about from its inception then?
Yes.
Listen,
you're preaching to the choir.
Your argument stand up?
I've been preaching that since day one. Yes, the business of boxing is corrupt, has been for since the beginning.
You're just being inconsistent then, because you've told me that Jack Johnson became champion from beating Jim Jeffries, who was one of the greatest exponents of drawing the color line.
That's my personal view on the issue. Now, if you disagree, I'll be more than happy to hear what you have to say. And you know what? You might convince me otherwise, right?
Well,
but here's what I do know. My argument. But here's what I do know. Here's what I do know.
No, what's your argument, John? What's your argument?
My argument was that there was a consensus formed that Tommy Burns was the champion. And in all fairness to Tommy Burns, he did actually fight Jack Johnson. So that's when he became the champion, and that's one of the massive problems with trying to have a lineal champion, because Tommy Burns became champion by beating Marvin Hart, who had no real claim to the title, and a consensus was gradually formed by the time that Tommy Burns was champion that he was entitled to make that claim. So that was a consensus champion formed by the media of the day. And in fairness to Tommy Burns, reluctantly, he did fight Jack Johnson.
Okay. So fighting Jack Johnson meant what?
Well, Nat Fleischer, and I've got a quote from his 50 years of ringside. In fact, I don't really want to read it out because some of the language is a bit, it's not politically correct, shall we say.
Okay.
But the gist of it is that the reason that Jim Jeffries retired was because between 1905 and 1910, the 4 best fighters were all black: McVeigh, Jeanette, Langford, and Johnson. And he didn't want to fight them because he drew the colour line.
Dang.
And that's the reason that he retired.
When you say he drew the colour line, could you be clearer on that?
Yeah, I'll be very clear. That's the term that's used when black fighters were prevented from fighting for the heavyweight championship. And that's the term that they use. So Jim Jeffries said, I draw the colour line. I won't fight. And they didn't use a term that I'm prepared to repeat on this show.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a common practice in the sport that persists even up to this day.
Okay, but so we're not going to get away from the point then. So the point to crystallize everything. Your point in a nutshell, John Daly.
Okay, so the consensus championship was formed by the media of the day. So when we are saying the lineal champion is not the consensus champion, it's as legitimate now as it was when the heavyweight championship was established. And that's how it was established, by a consensus of the boxing media. So the Fight Doctor is being very misleading by claiming that HBO claimed that George Foreman wasn't the champion anymore and that Evander Holyfield was, because that was the general consensus of the media of the day.
So you are saying, in a nutshell, if I'm correct, John, that the consensus view has a strong role to play in deciding who is lineal.
No, I am saying that one of the problems with the lineal champion is you can be lineal champion, but not the consensus champion. There's nothing to hold you to account, so you can fight poor opposition for as long as you want. I'll give you some recent examples, although I don't recognize his claim. Francis Pianetta, the Silver Surfer, Tom Schwartz, and Otto Wallin have all been billed as title fights for the lineal championship, even though none of them were ranked in the top 10 of any measure of world boxing. Foreman did a very similar thing, and so did Spinks. So those are 3 champions who've claimed to be lineal champions. I'm not going to get into the veracity of their claim at this stage. Right. Who fought terrible opposition and were by no stretch of the imagination the consensus champion.
Right.
So that's one of the problems with the lineal championship.
So
what do you do when the lineal champion retires?
So I have a counter argument.
Go ahead.
So I'm actually agreeing with Mr. Dealey about the whole problem with the lineal title is that it allows for the lineal champion to fight nondescript opposition. Totally in agreement there. However, I would remind Mr. Dealey about Joe Lewis's Bum of the Month tour. Okay. And that when Joe Lewis went on his Bum of the Month tour, at no point that I'm aware of did the quote unquote consensus form an opinion that someone other than Joe Lewis was the heavyweight champion of the world. Okay, despite the fact that he was on his Bum of the Month tour.
I'll come back to you on that Bum of the Month. It's a derogatory term for his contenders, but they were actually highly ranked contenders for the most part. And we can go through those rankings if we need to. But a large number of the Bum of the Month opponents were actually rated in the Ring magazine. Part of the reason they got labeled as bums was because of Lewis's dominance. But when it comes down to that actual ranking by the Ring magazine, which was the main custodian of not only boxing rankings but the Lineal title at the time, they were actually decent ranked. Also, Lewis fought all the top contenders as well of his day.
So now let me ask this question. Do you agree that Gene Tunney, when he defeated Jack Dempsey, was in fact the lineal heavyweight champion of the world?
I don't really recognize the lineal champion. I don't really recognize anyone that draws the color line as a true champion, because there's somebody to contend that. And in that era, it was always the black heavyweight champion, who often was actually the better champion.
Okay, I can, no argument for me. I agree with that point. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Okay, so I think that was the lineal, but not consensus argument. The Fight Doctor agrees with John Dealey. Ultimately, FD.
Well, I agree, but not. It's not. So I agree with his point that the heavyweight champion must be the guy who is the last man standing. Meaning that in the era of the color line, if the quote unquote champion did not actually prove that he was the best man in the division, then his status as champion was tenuous at best. I agree with that 100%.
Okay, so when did Jack Johnson defend his world heavyweight championship against the black heavyweight world championship?
He did not. Jack Johnson, after having knocked out Hart and Jeffries, he drew the color line. So that's a valid and legitimate criticism of Jack Johnson. Yes, sir. And if your argument is that invalidates his standing as heavyweight champion, I'll be willing to entertain that argument. Definitely. No question.
Because that's always been the root start of all of these claims that you make, that there can only be one champion.
Well, there can only be one.
It is always Jack Johnson, and there's multiple issues with that.
So normally when I use Jack Johnson in my argument, it's typically against the validity of the sanctioning organizations, seeing as that there was no WBC, there was no WBA, there was no IBF, there was no WBO. None of those organizations existed when Jack Johnson was heavyweight champion. However, most people who recognize the WBC also recognize that Jack Johnson was the heavyweight champion of the world. And my question to those folks is, how can you recognize Jack Johnson as being the heavyweight champion when, in fact, the WBC, BA, IBF, WBO did not exist?
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Well, I'll come back to you on that. I can answer that question anyway.
Okay,
right,
so
we need
to be getting to key points, not interested in messing around.
This will be quite concise, Rafi.
We're looking for key points. That's all we're looking at. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Does the Police Gazette still exist, Fight Doctor?
The who?
Exactly. That was the primary publication determining the winner of boxing matches during the era of Jack Johnson. So just because a governing body comes and goes, or a newspaper publication comes and goes, that doesn't invalidate the heavyweight championship of the world.
But again, we're not talking about the heavyweight championship of the world. We're talking about the WBC, the WBA, IBF, and WBO.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the consensus that formed who was the champion of the world was a consensus of newspaper publications that are no longer in existence for the most part.
Okay. That's fine. But again,
so should we just stop the heavyweight championship of the world once those publications fold and disappear?
But again, the question is, what gives the WBC, the WBA, IBF, WBO, and WB whomever, what gives them legitimacy, right? What gives them the authority to decide who is or who isn't a champion? Where does this authority come from? That's my question. Where does this legitimacy come from?
The authority stems from the fact that initially there were 3 sanctioning bodies, and on rare occasions was the heavyweight champion not the holder of those titles, depending on when you look at it. So, and at some points there were 4 sanctioning bodies during this period, but the heavyweight champion held them all. So the only real true measure in the modern era, from the 1920s onwards, of who the heavyweight champion is the undisputed heavyweight champion.
Well, I disagree with that because, again, when we look back at...
So was Joe Louis heavyweight champion?
Well, I think history records Joe Louis as heavyweight champion.
Okay, which belts did he hold?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't
NBA
recall.
And the New York Athletic State Commission, and he also had the IBU belt as well.
But again, when history records Joe Louis, I think you're making my argument here, because when history records Joe Louis as the heavyweight champion, it does not record him as having been the heavyweight champion because he held these belts. It records him as being heavyweight champion because he beat James Braddock. Okay.
Yeah, but how do you establish a heavyweight champion after Gene Tunney retires?
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let me finish. Now, you use Joe Louis as an example, right? Now, Joe Louis is heavyweight champion by function of him having beaten James Braddock, not because he held these various sanctioning organizations' belts.
How is James Braddock champion?
Because he beat Max Baer.
How is Max Baer champion?
Because he beat who did Max Baer beat?
Primo Canero. How is Primo Canero champion?
Because he beat who did Canero
Jack
beat?
Sharkey.
Jack Sharkey, right?
How was Jack Sharkey champion?
I want to say he beat Max Schmeling.
Yes. How is Max Schmeling champion?
Who did Schmeling beat?
He didn't. Schmeling and Sharkey fought for the New York State Athletic Commission and the NBA and the IBU titles as the number one ranked contender and the number 2 ranked contender when Gene Tunney retired.
So I think
the governing bodies were how the best in the class was established, because they were the ranked 1 and 2 contenders.
So I think you've just proven my point.
No, because the governing bodies are the ones who decided who the 1 and 2 ranked contenders were, and they fought for those belts. So when the champion of the world retired, to establish a new best in class, the governing bodies decided who the best 2 contenders were.
So in effect, you have a consensus number 1 and a consensus number 2.
No. The sanctioning bodies.
Wait.
Consensus from the newspapers. This is the important point.
Now hold on a second. Now you can't use a consensus argument only to turn around and discard it. So you have to be consistent with your logic here.
No. I don't recognize. I've just said, I've said what the problems with the lineal argument are. I don't recognize a consensus champion. I'm saying an undisputed champion, and I've said it very clearly, is the only true measure of who the world champion is.
Yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've been listening. I've been waiting just like you to hear the key, the crunch point, the point that made it all make sense. And I've been waiting, I've been listening, I've been wishing, I've been praying, and it never came. But it has just come. We've just arrived at the point, the nutshell point that I've been asking for. a point in a nutshell, and that point was, I don't believe in consensus. I believe in undisputed consensus. That involves opinion, opinion of this one, opinion of that one. Undisputed takes opinion out of it. You have a man who has collected all of the belts, and he is now undisputed. Didn't rely on opinion. Didn't rely on opinion or consensus. Didn't rely on broken lineal, faulty lineal lines, questionable lineal lines. Didn't rely on that. It relied on one man collecting all of the belts. And that is the key. One man collecting all of the belts and ending up being titled Undisputed because he undisputedly collected all of the belts. Takes out of it opinion. It takes out consensus. It takes out anything other than one man collecting all of the belts. Leighton Evelyn, your position on this thing. I think we've cracked it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to commiserate Fight Doctor for taking all those L's because they missed the work. And secondly, I totally agree with you. I don't believe in a lineal champion because he's been broken up so many times. You can't actually say it is unless you've got an undisputed. You've got an undisputed, then it starts from there, mate.
Yeah. Undisputed is the key. Undisputed is the key.
All right. So now, can I answer this undisputed?
You can write your own obituary. Yes, go ahead.
Now,
but it is over. It is over.
Oh well, we'll see. The fat lady has not yet sung. Okay.
Well,
now, my question. Read
your obituary.
So my question to Mr. DeLee and Mr. Evelyn is: have they ever heard of the organization called the IBO? Have they ever heard of an organization called the IBA? Have they ever heard of an organization called the WBF? Well, these are all sanctioning organizations, right? And I'm sure that they also have a heavyweight championship belt. Now, my question is, if someone other than the holder of the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO title belts holds one of these belts from one of these organizations, or if the same person holds the belt from the WBF, the IBO, and the IBF, does this person not dispute the championships that are held by whoever holds the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO titles?
No, you go with the major ones.
Who decides what is a major belt and what is a minor belt? Because
the more established, the bigger commercial ones.
Once upon a time, the WBO was considered a quote unquote minor belt, and then
if it becomes a major, then so be it. But we go with the major ones.
Again. Who defines what is a major or minor belt?
Well, it's major. Right? It's defined by the age of the age.
Raphael, I can come up with a definition for that.
Yeah, you can do. Carry on.
Okay, so for a belt or governing body to be recognised, ultimately it needs to be a solvent business. So out of the ones that you've listed, the only belt that's becoming close to be getting recognition is the IBO, which currently happens to be in the possession of Anthony Joshua. However, most people don't recognize this belt because they just award it to people. So here's the key point for you, Fight Doctor. There are no sanctioning fees. So unless fighters pay a sanctioning fee, those organizations are not sanctioning bodies because they do not charge a sanctioning fee.
So
like here's the IBO.
Here's the problem with that argument, right? And let me use an example. So we've all heard of the IBF, right? Now, prior to 1983, the IBF did not exist. And the IBF just sort of magically forms itself in the dust of the ground, and the gods of boxing breathed life into the nostrils of the IBF, and it became a living being. And one day, a guy by the name of Larry Holmes drops his WBC belt, right, and assumes the IBF title. My question is, why is the IBF title all of a sudden legitimate? Because Larry Holmes is holding. Is it because Larry Holmes is holding?
My question to you, Fight Doctor, is: did Larry Holmes pay sanctioning fees to the IBF?
But what does sanctioning fees have to do with anything? I'm sorry, but please show me. But please show me in the Marcus of Queensberry rules where it says anything about a a sanctioning organization must charge sanctioning fees in order for it to be legitimate. That makes no sense. I'm sorry, but how does that?
It's very clear why it makes sense. So the governing body sanctions the fight. Therefore, that governing body agrees that this is a world title fight or a fight for a particular level and charge a fee. As soon as the fighters accept this and start paying the fee, that provides legitimacy to them as a governing body, because they are taking a charge for being a governing body. It's very simple.
Exactly. And see, that's the problem, because
it's not really. I mean, one of the biggest criticisms of Larry Holmes' reign.
But see, here's the problem.
No, you're interrupting now. One of the biggest problems with Larry Holmes' reign is that he was never undisputed. Not at any point did he hold the WBA. And then, when he was asked to fight mandatories, he dropped the WBC.
So then, is it your argument that Larry Holmes was indeed not the true heavyweight champion?
I would say, and this is still a blot on Larry Holmes' copybook, that you can't agree on how many world title defenses he had. The record books show 19, but this is when the splintering of the belts happened. So if we take it back to Ali loses to Spinks. At that point, there's 2 world title belts, the WBC and the WBA. Spinks and Ali were already ordered. The winner of that fight was ordered to fight Ken Norton, who'd beaten Jimmy Young in a final eliminator. Because Spinks agrees to rematch Ali for more money, he's stripped of the WBC. This is awarded to Ken Norton, who goes down in history as the only heavyweight champion to never win a heavyweight championship fight, and loses to Larry Holmes. At no point was Larry Holmes undisputed. The title was vacant, and I'd have to look up who first picked it up. I feel like it's Tim Witherspoon, but I'm not sure it is.
So then, is it your argument
that there was always a dispute? Larry Holmes was never undisputed.
So is it your argument then that Muhammad Ali did not win the heavyweight title 3 times?
Well, it goes down in the record books as the first to win the Lineal title 3 times.
But my question to you is it your argument that Muhammad Ali did not win the heavyweight title 3 times?
I'm comfortable with that idea on 2 reasons. First of all, he's got some very questionable wins over Ken Norton anyway, if we're all going to sit here and be honest about it. And he did not become undisputed 3 times. He became undisputed twice. So, yes, on that basis, yes.
So it's your argument that Muhammad Ali did not win the heavyweight title 3 times. Am I hearing you correctly?
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? This is the beginning of the splintering of the heavyweight championship of the world. So the record books show he's the first man to become lineal 3 times. However, when he rematched Spinks and then retires, he's only fighting for the WBA. Now, that's what happened. So once you don't have an undisputed champion, and let's be frank, by the time that Ali beats Spinks, he is not the best heavyweight on the planet. Let's just be realistic about this. Are you going to tell me that when Muhammad Ali beat Michael Spinks, he was without question the best heavyweight on the planet, and that was a complete undisputed thing.
So that is not again.
Well, no, so my answer to your question is
wait.
He's won the Lineal Championship 3 times, and he's the only man to do so.
Okay, but you don't recognize the Lineal Championship. Yes.
No,
All
I
right,
don't.
So again, my question is: do you recognize Muhammad Ali as having won the heavyweight title on 3 separate occasions?
No.
And see now, and this is exactly the
wins
problem.
A version of the title.
So
you have a rival to him in Ken Norton, who arguably had already beaten him, and it was it's very questionable that last fight between Norton and Ali about who the winner was.
And so this is exactly where the undisputed argument falls apart, because
it doesn't fall apart because Mike Tyson comes back and unifies all the titles.
But wait a minute, but let me make my argument, please. So apparently you have Leon Spinks, who wins the quote unquote undisputed title from Muhammad Ali, right? And then because of the politics and machinations that happen in the business of boxing, Leon Spinks is stripped of the WBC trinket and then goes on to lose to Muhammad Ali. So Muhammad Ali loses his title to Leon Spinks, but doesn't win it back when he beats Leon Spinks, according to Mr. DeLee's logic. Now,
okay, I'll give you the logic, and this is the problem with the whole situation. Ken Norton and Jimmy Young were certainly rated within the top 5 at worst in the heavyweight rankings at the point that they fought each other for the right to fight for the world title. What was beholden to the champion was whoever won between Spinks and Ali was to fight Ken Norton because he won that match. You have to hold the champions to account. Spinks chose not to do that. He chose to fight Ali for more money, who at this point in his career was far, far from the great that he was, which is why he retired after he rematched Spinks.
Okay, so do you not see how you just shot yourself in the foot?
No.
Because just 30 minutes ago, you were arguing about how boxing is a business.
No, I don't see it as a problem to say that we don't have one heavyweight champion.
But 30 minutes ago...
This is what I'll say, and I'll say it again to be absolutely clear. If we don't have an undisputed champion, we don't have a number 1 champion in the world. We have title holders. So
again, how is it that you can make the argument that boxing is a business?
So what I would tell you was the heavyweight championship went vacant until Tyson was undisputed. Very consistent argument.
So please tell me, how is it that what exactly was the process of the heavyweight title having gone vacant in the case of Leon Spinks? What was the process?
The failure of the champion to fight the top-rated contenders, and instead fighting a lesser-rated contender.
I see. So, in other words, the champion can be stripped of his title by a sanctioning organization, and that is legitimate in your mind.
Yes, because otherwise you end up in a situation where you have people like Tom Schwartz getting world title fights, people like Francis Pianetta and the Silver Surfer getting world title fights.
So let me ask you this question. Was Muhammad Ali not worthy of a heavyweight title fight?
He wasn't more worthy than Ken Norton.
But
he was just coming off a loss.
But that wasn't my question.
Just coming off a loss.
But that wasn't my question.
Coming off a win.
But that wasn't my question. My question was Muhammad Ali not worthy?
Okay, straight answer, no, because he's coming off a loss, and on that basis, he isn't the most highly rated fighter in the division. If you're going to have one champion he is required to fight the best opposition until he loses. And at the point that Spinks rematched Ali, Ali was not the best opposition. Are you trying to tell me Ali was the best fighter at that point?
That's not my argument at all. My argument is...
Well, then we agree.
No, sir. My argument is that Ali would have been a worthy contender. Now, I'm not sure.
He was coming off the loss.
But wait a minute. Hold on a second. Wait. See, again, context is important, right? Now, you have and Muhammad Ali, who is arguably the greatest heavyweight ever. Yes, he was coming off of a loss, off of a close decision. I think it was a split decision, wasn't it? When he lost to Spinks in the first fight.
Yeah, it was. So
again, context is important here. So
had he not been the beneficiary of a very close decision against Ken Norton, who's the fighter? If we're going to put things into context,
okay, but what is the Ken Norton fight?
Things into context, the Ken Norton fight before Ali fought Spinks was a tremendously close and contentious decision at the time.
But again, what does the Ken Norton fight have to do with Ali's loss to Leon Spinks? Nothing.
The context is, at this stage, Ken Norton is a higher rated fighter than Ali.
But if we're going to use your logic that boxing is a business first, then I would argue that Ali was the more worthy contender, seeing as that there was more of a the fight was more lucrative. Now, you said yourself that Leon Spinks went and fought Ali for more money. So obviously there was more demand for a rematch with Ali than there was for a fight with Ken Norton. So using your logic, if boxing is indeed a business, as you argue, right? That was your argument 30 minutes ago.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Wait, let me finish. Let me make my argument. If indeed boxing is a business, as you argued 30 minutes ago, and Leon Spinks fought Ali which was the more lucrative fight, and obviously there was more demand for an Ali rematch than there was for a Ken Norton fight, right? So boxing is a business, as you argue. Leon Spinks fights Muhammad Ali in a rematch to make more money in a more lucrative fight, in a fight for which there was more demand. And yet and still, Leon Spinks is stripped by the WBC for having done what was in the interest of the sport, in terms of business, in terms of Leon Spinks' bottom line, and in terms of the overall legacy, in terms of Leon Spinks' overall legacy. Right? Because listen, nobody is going to remember Leon Spinks for having beaten Ken Norton. Let's be real, right? Seriously.
So
that would be an impressive task, seeing as they didn't fight.
What does that got to do with?
I'm just going to answer his point first, Rafi, if that's okay.
Okay.
He thinks he can use my logic against me. So you're discounting the fact that a governing body, which is a business, has the right to strip a boxer of his title because they are a business, but you are justifying Leon Spinks fighting Ali because it's a business. So you are now trying to have your cake and eat it. What I am saying is it's the right and proper job of the businesses to establish that the champion fights the best available contender. That's the purpose of their business, and that's what the sanctioning fees are for.
So I did not justify Leon Spinks having fought Ali in a rematch. That, sir, is me using your logic. That was your logic.
Yeah, but then it doesn't work, does it? Because then you're arguing against yourself.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because
you
again,
can't, on the one hand, say it's right to take the Ali fight because it's more money, and then on the other hand, say it's wrong for the WBC to strip him because of money.
Well, no, sir.
You're trying to have your cake and eat it, sir.
No, sir. I'm not the one who made the argument that boxing was a business. My argument is that boxing is a sport.
So in that case, you would agree. You would agree.
Now it's your argument.
Norton then. So
No.
presumably
No,
you
no,
agree
no,
that
sir.
Spinks fought Norton and fought Norton.
No, sir.
Why
No,
not
sir, that's
then?
not. Listen. These strawman arguments that you're making, they don't work. All right, now
It's not a straw man argument at all.
I never made
It's
that
very
argument.
clear.
I never made the argument that
My
Spinks could have fought.
my point to you is that if you do not have an undisputed champion, you have titleists and title holders.
That's
And
nonsense.
why is it nonsense?
Again, well, okay. So apparently, Leon Spinks won the heavyweight championship of the world for Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, he did, but he won the undisputed championship of the world. He won the WBC and the WBA.
And this is exactly where the undisputed argument falls apart. Because again,
No, it doesn't. It's quite clear.
actually, it does fall apart because
Go on.
how is it? Because again, my argument is you can only have one champion because there's only one world.
Yeah, so you can have a vacant champion because we don't have an undisputed.
Well, how is it that a champion? How is it that the heavyweight title becomes vacant all because the WBC decides to strip Leon Spinks?
Because otherwise, you end up in a situation where you have Tyson Fury fighting Tom Schwartz for the heavyweight championship of the world.
But again, in the case of
After
Leon
not
Spinks,
fighting for 2 years.
but again, in the case of Leon Spinks,
In fact, I think it was Francis Pianetta.
So essentially,
by your logic, we have Tyson Fury sitting on the sidelines, getting fat, doing cocaine, drinking alcohol, not fighting anybody, coming out of retirement and fighting the Silver Surfer and Francis Pianetta. And by your logic, those are 2 world title fights.
So by your logic, so using your logic, on Monday, Leon Spinks is the heavyweight champion of the world. On Tuesday, he isn't. And he didn't fight on Monday or Tuesday.
The issue is, if he'd have stuck to the rules, if he would have stuck to the rules, he would have fought Ken Norton.
But exactly why? But who exactly? When? How is it that the WBC determines who is or who is not a champion? Listen, the WBC can determine who is or who is not a WBC title holder. I would agree with you there. But the WBC cannot determine who is or who is not the world champion. They do not have the authority to make that determination.
So this is the point, right? If you don't have the obligation to fight the contenders who have worked their way up to the rankings, to become the #1 contender, you undermine your claim to be the best fighter in the world, which is what the champion is.
No, sir. No, sir.
So you don't. So your position is that the heavyweight champion of the world is not obligated to fight the #1 contenders. Is that your position?
My position is that the heavyweight champion of the world or any champion in any division is not necessarily the best fighter in the division. That's my contention.
So if you don't have a contender process, how do you hold your champion to account? Because then you completely devalue and undermine the championship.
Here's how you hold your heavyweight. Here's how you hold your champion to account. You stop buying his fights. If the champion is not fighting the fight that you want to do,
I thought you said boxing wasn't a business.
Boxing is a sport, but boxing is also a business.
Listen,
there is a business aspect to the sport of boxing. But boxing in and of itself is not a business sport.
Oh my gosh.
He's coming back down the river, Raph. He's coming back down the river.
He's coming back down the river. So, you know what? This is the thing. When 30 minutes ago, 29 minutes ago, when I said, well, we've hit the nutshell, we've got to that place, we've got to that term that sums it up that I've been looking for. I was convinced that we got there. I was convinced 30 minutes ago. Now 30 minutes later, and the fight doctor, you've done what you do best. You've talked in circles, going here, there, and everywhere, and ending up no further along than we were 30 minutes ago, because I know you very, very well. So we basically wrapped this up 30 minutes ago, but I thought, let me just let it go and see where we go. But we are still at that same place. And ultimately, my findings are that with Lineal, lineal structure, with the lineal philosophy, yeah, you can fight a guy who's supposed to be lineal in this broken lineal age, plenty broken lineals. Yeah, you can fight that guy, and that's fine. That's all cool and the gang. Or you can fight all of the champions. Fight all of the champions, collect all of the belts, and become undisputed. And to me, right about now, at this age, at this stage, I say undisputed over lineal. Let's go over to the final word from the fight doctor.
So again, to clear this up, if there's any misunderstanding, boxing is a sport. Now, it would be irresponsible on my end to ignore the business aspect of the sport of boxing. So yes, it's called prize fighting. They fight for a prize. They fight for a purse. I agree. However, again, when you go to a boxing gym and when you learn there is everything to learn about the sport of boxing, you don't exit the boxing gym with a degree in business. You don't. All right? You learn how to fight. So to sit and pretend that boxing is a business in the sense that you learn business when you go into a boxing gym, that's not how it works. Okay. Now, is there a business to the sport of boxing? I agree.
The problem is that everything you said, it bears no relation to what we're talking about. Because what I'm asking for you now is your key point, is your key finishing statement. What is your key finishing statement? So you've gone left, you've gone right, you haven't really gone anywhere. What I'm asking for you, please, is your key finishing statement.
My key finishing statement is this: that there is only one world, therefore there can only be one world champion, and that the sanctioning organizations do not have the wherewithal to decide who is or who is not the heavyweight champion of the world or the champion of any other division. There is one world. Therefore, there can only be one world champion. So the argument that you have to be undisputed, quote unquote, whatever undisputed means, to be the heavyweight champion is ridiculous, utterly.
Okay, thank you very much for your final closing statement. John D. Lee, your final closing statement, please.
I agree that there's one world. Therefore, I agree you can only have one world champion. However, we don't have to have a world champion. The championship can be vacant. And the only way, if the world champion retires, to establish a new best in class is to have an undisputed champion. So therefore, we need an undisputed champion. And it's always been the best way to establish who the world champion is. Up until the point that Spinks gets stripped, it wasn't a problem because the world champion was always undisputed, certainly from the time of Joe Louis, at least. Therefore, the lineal argument does not work because there is no way of putting any scrutiny on the champion. The fight doctor's suggestion is a war of attrition to not buy the fights. Well, the last time I checked, nobody's been buying the Tom Schwartz fights. Tyson Fury's been putting on pay-per-view in the UK and it hasn't worked. He's still walking around trying to claim to be lineal. And so are his fans. The only way to have a clear-cut world heavyweight champion of the world is an undisputed champion.
Thank you. You see, I'm aware with the fight doctor, I'm aware of these flights of fantasies. I'm aware of these journeys. I've become very, very aware of them. And so I'm aware that in order to defeat the fight doctor soundly, one has to have some very clear sound bites. And then you have to repeat them. And then you have to smash him with it again. It's almost like a TV ad. You have to repeat your key points, repeat them, bang them, smash them. And I think finally, we got there. We got there at the 1 hour mark, actually. But I thought, let me give the Fight Doctor the benefit of the doubt. Let me see if we can keep it tight or not. But Fight Doctor's style is very circumulative. He has a very roundabout style, and it is a feat. It is a feat trying to nail him down, keep him on the straight and narrow. It is a difficult task, but I think we did it. We did it at the 1 hour mark, and we had the overtime. You got the bonus time. You people at home listening, and you got your bonus time. You got your half-hour bonus time. You got your bonus time, and I think we made it out of here. We made it out of here. I think we just about made it. Just about made it. And the final word. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, the Fight Doctor. Thank you, John, for taking on this task. Not an easy task at all. Thank you both for taking part in this debate. And Leighton, Evelyn, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Can I say something to John first?
Of course. You get the last word. You get the last word because you waited patiently.
I want to thank John because I've never seen no one obliterate the Fight Doctor like that. It was a complete afternoon of obliterating the Fight Doctor. Thanks, John. Cheers, mate.
You're very welcome. And I'm happy to continue his education whenever I have time.
Okay, so the Fight Doctor. It's always hard work for me listening to you going around the bushes and going around and coming around and going around again, and you still ain't moved on from what you were 20 minutes before. It's always tough work, but I appreciate the fact that you stick at it. You stick at it. There's a lot of Americans come and go. But what I find with you, Fight Doctor, is that you keep on it, mate. You keep on spreading your word. You keep on spreading your beliefs. It don't matter how few people believe what you believe, but you keep on spreading it. And for that, I have to give you a ding of the bell.
Well, I learned something today. I learned that Muhammad Ali is in fact not the 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. So
you're not gonna try that little sneaky little move there, little sneaky jab there. We're not gonna do that. We can surely discuss that in another show. But my job as the ringmaster, as the MC, master of ceremonies, is to try to keep the thing moving at a certain pace that it may captivate the listener and enhance their enjoyment of the thing. So, that's my job. So that's when I try and crunch in, when I try and sink in, when I try and get some things in a nutshell. That's what I'm trying to do. And I think that we've made it through and the numbers have been quite stable. So I trust that people have enjoyed themselves. And gentlemen, all of you, I'd like to express my thanks and appreciation that you would take time out of your day to come and have this discussion. Thank you, everybody on the panel. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you.
If I may send a shout out to Mr. D. Lee and Mr. Evelyn, it was a pleasure chopping it up with you guys.
I always enjoy these debates, and sometimes we agree with Fight Doctor.
Okay. And we did it. We got through it. Gonna have to catch the playback on this one. Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Raphael Dawkins. It's the Combat Radio. Look out for the live show. Look out for the videos. And we are out. Blessed.